Hi, I'm here with David Cooper. He's the National Channels Manager with Citrix Canada. He's brought in an iPad, and we're just checking out the World Cup website. Who's your pick to win the whole thing, David?
I think Brazil's going to go all the way, Brian.
Okay, well, you know, it's a lot of fun to use the iPad, and it's pretty slick. We've been playing with a bit, looking at the World Cup stuff, but can you get any work done on this thing?
You know, Brian, that's a great question. Through the power of Citrix using the receiver client, I actually prefer to use this for most of the things I do day to day. And the iPad is just a tremendously mobile and versatile device. I'd be happy to show you some of the things that I do on it. So I'll just minimize this web page here. So the first thing, and probably what most people do every day, is email. Now, obviously, the iPad can do email on its own, but I use Microsoft Outlook in the office, and I use it for a lot more than just sending quick notes. I integrate my Outlook with OneNote, another Microsoft product, and also with SharePoint. So I can have the same experience on the road as I have in the office without having to make any compromises. So here, for example, I can bring up an email just as I would at my desk. So Citrix put a lot of emphasis on end-user experience, not just in terms of the way this virtual environment performs, but also in how I interact. So with a three-finger gesture like this, I bring up the keyboard, which is a nice convenience. I can create a new email, send one to my boss, David Wright. Just thank him very much for his support. Thanks, Dave.
So this is actually the Microsoft Outlook program you would normally use on your desktop computer.
It is absolutely the same. And when I'm at the office even, I use this virtual environment. This desktop that we're seeing here today is actually running in Miami, Florida, in our corporate data center. And the performance is excellent. So I've just sent him an email. And again, I have full access to all of the other Office tools and other applications that Citrix makes available to me. But more relevant to professionals that are on the road. So let's look at a project manager's day, for example. They're running around, they're between meetings, between locations, and sometimes they need quick and easy access to critical information. So I've downloaded a project plan from the internet, just a sample to show you, that it's possible for a project manager to get access to their plan. So here's the project plan. You can see here I've got access to it. I can look at dates, modify the plan if necessary, email it out to my stakeholders. So for legal professionals, maybe on the road, need quick access to documents for their clients, billing software. In the back of a taxi cab between meetings, they can be productive. And it's instant on and it's always available. And of course, it's very secure. So let's look at another example with Microsoft PowerPoint, which is an application fairly general that most of us have to use. With PowerPoint, I may need to just edit a couple of slides before I deliver a presentation. So here's a Zen desktop presentation that I've delivered recently. I'm going to double click on this slide, which has a graphic on it. I'll zoom in a little bit to make it easier to edit, and I just want to shrink this graphic down a little bit, modify this slide. I'll click on the handle here with my finger and just drag it up like this. And you can see that the experience is fairly, actually very good. And it's showing me the size of the icon as I drag it. Okay, and I'm going to just hold it and drag it over here to the middle. Now, I'm a power user of Microsoft Office. I've been using it for a long time, as have most people, and I've gotten to learn keyboard shortcuts. So I think, potential frustration that some people would have is, only having the touch and not being able to use those shortcuts, but we can. So let me bring up that keyboard again. You see along the top row here, I have Control, Alt, Tab, Escape, and so on.
Now, is that added by your application, or is that inherent in the iPad keyboard?
That's added. Okay, so if I push Control and then D, that's equivalent to duplicate in PowerPoint, and then I'll minimize the keyboard. And what I have now, or should have, are two Dazzle icons.
It looks pretty good. It looks like you can actually replicate that desktop experience on the iPad. So you've been using this for a while. What sort of things do you work on?
Certainly, and Microsoft Office applications typically. I also need to go into SAP. I manage vacations for my staff. I enter expenses. I approve expenses. I also go into our SharePoint site and our intranet. That's where I find information about our products, what the competition is up to, new announcements. And that's what I spend most of my time doing. If I look at my workflow, probably only 10 or 15% of my time, I would really need a laptop to be productive. Most of the time, I can use a device like the iPad.
I see. And what do I need to actually get this to work at the back end?
Great question. So any of our customers that are Zen app, or what used to be known as Presentation Server or MetaFrame, those customers can take advantage of this now. We make the Citrix receiver available free on the App Store. There's a little bit of configuration that would have to be done in the data center just to make it compatible. And the new Zen desktop software as well. Customers that have that or are looking to add that the software and infrastructure components that make those technologies possible.
So David, anytime I'm connecting to my work servers, I want to make sure that's a secure connection. What is the security built into this?
Great question, Brian. And one of the things, performance being one, another being security, that customers really look to Citrix for in this solution. So there'd be three areas, I would say. The first being that with this connection, all of my documents are in the data center in Miami. I'm not carrying them around with me. I don't depend on the local storage here, and if it's stolen, none of my company's information is lost. Second, the connection between my iPad here and the data center in Miami is encrypted. So that it makes it impervious to eavesdropping. And third, when I authenticate to the data center, I enter my username and password from the Windows domain. I also use the RSA soft token here on my iPhone to get a code that changes every 60 seconds. And that's sort of the two-factor authentication. So strong authentication to get in, strong encryption, and of course there's no data being transferred.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for coming in and showing off your iPad.
Brian, thank you for having me.
I guess it's more than just a toy after all. So I'm Brian Jackson with ITbusiness.ca.